There is a deadline approaching, a moment on the calendar that almost no one is talking about, yet it will define the next century of human civilization. That deadline is the year 2030. To most people, it's just another date in the future. But to governments, space agencies, and a handful of powerful corporations, 2030 is the finish line in a race unlike any humanity has ever faced. This is not the race to the moon of the 1960s. It is not the race for satellites or for dominance in low Earth orbit. This is something much bigger, far more consequential and far more secret. It is the race to decide who will control the next frontier of human civilization, who will own the resources outside Earth, and who will dictate the political and economic rules of a future where space is not a dream but a battleground. When historians look back 100 years from now, they may very well say that the true beginning of humanity's expansion into the cosmos didn't start with Apollo, didn't start with SpaceX, didn't even start with the International Space Station. They will say it began now, this decade, when the United States, China, India, and several emerging powers quietly began fighting for the moon, Mars, and everything beyond. The year 2030 matters because by that point, the world will have passed a threshold. Lunar bases will be either built or claimed. Mining rights will be staked out. The technologies that allow nations to harvest ice, extract oxygen, refine metals, and produce fuel in space will either belong to one side or the other. And once those systems are in place, it will be nearly impossible to dislodge the country or coalition that dominates them. Space, like the oceans and like the early days of territorial exploration, rewards whoever arrives first and can stay. By 2030, staying will no longer be theoretical. It will be real, permanent, and irreversible. To understand why this decade has become the critical window, you have to understand what nations are actually fighting over. It is not simply prestige. Prestige mattered during the Cold War. Planting a flag mattered. Sending humans beyond Earth mattered. But today the stakes are not symbolic. They are physical, tangible, and immensely valuable. At the moon's south pole lies something that changes everything. Frozen water. Not a few scattered molecules, but tens of billions of tons of ice mixed into the permanently shadowed craters. Ice is not just ice. It is oxygen to breathe, hydrogen for rocket fuel, water for agriculture and industry. In a lunar environment where transporting a single liter of water from Earth costs thousands of dollars, having access to a nearly limitless supply on site is the difference between survival and collapse. Whoever controls the polar ice will control the moon's economy. But the ice is only the beginning. Scattered across the lunar surface are metals that Earth is running out of: titanium, rare earth elements, platinum group metals, and deeper beneath the surface lies something far more valuable: helium-3. On Earth, helium-3 is incredibly rare, but on the moon, it may exist in quantities large enough to power fusion reactors, real fusion, clean energy with no carbon emissions, and almost limitless potential. If helium-3 becomes viable, whoever controls the supply could dominate global energy markets for generations. This is not science fiction. China has openly stated that helium-3 is a strategic target of their lunar program. The United States has mentioned it carefully, often indirectly. Private companies have already begun drafting early-stage mining proposals. The moon is not empty. It is a vault. Now imagine a world where nations are able to fuel rockets using lunar hydrogen instead of Earth-based fuel. Suddenly, launching spacecraft becomes exponentially cheaper. Deep space becomes accessible. Mars becomes reachable without trillion-dollar budgets. This is why 2030 is a deadline, because any nation that secures the moon's resources this decade will gain the strategic high ground, not metaphorically, but physically. They will have the fuel, the metals, the water, the infrastructure, and everyone else will be forced to buy access from them. The moon will become the first off-world economy in human history. But this is only half the story. The other half is even more intense: the military implications. Space is not just a marketplace, it's a choke point. Satellites power navigation, communication, financial markets, weather forecasting, military intelligence. Take out a nation's satellites, and their entire civilization goes dark. Every major military knows this, and they also know that whoever controls the moon controls the ability to interfere with or protect orbital assets. A base on the moon could observe Earth in real time with unparalleled clarity. It could host telescopes to detect missile launches sooner than any Earth-based radar. It could power deep space tracking systems, and although no one will admit this publicly, it could theoretically host kinetic weapons. Simple tungsten rods that, dropped from lunar orbit, would strike with the force of nuclear weapons without the radiation. Whether anyone intends to build such systems is debatable. That they could is undeniable. This is why the United States created the Artemis Accords, a set of rules designed to regulate how countries explore and use the moon. More than 30 nations have signed them, agreeing to transparency, peaceful cooperation, and resource-sharing principles. But one major player refused to join: China. Instead, China partnered with Russia to form the ILRS, the International Lunar Research Station, a direct alternative to the Artemis program. Two coalitions, two visions, two sets of rules, and one moon. For the first time since the Cold War, the world is dividing into space blocks. On one side, the United States, Europe, Japan, Canada, South Korea, Brazil, and others. On the other, China, Russia, Pakistan, Venezuela, and several African nations exploring partnerships. In the middle, countries like India, which have the capability to become major players, but have not yet chosen a side. By 2030, India may be the kingmaker. Their Chandrayaan missions, their lunar lander success, and their rapidly advancing space agency place them in a position to tilt the balance. But whatever choice they make, it will reshape the map of space politics for decades. Behind the scenes, corporations play a role just as large as governments. SpaceX, Blue Origin, Robotic, iSpace, and numerous Chinese startups are all fighting to build the infrastructure of the future: lunar landers, cargo haulers, communication relays, fuel depots, power stations, and mining robots. This is not science fiction, it is engineering work underway now. Elon Musk is aiming for a thriving Mars settlement by 2050. Jeff Bezos envisions millions living in rotating space habitats. China envisions the moon as a permanent industrial zone. Russia, despite setbacks, sees lunar nuclear reactors as a way to regain prestige. And India wants to be the technological backbone of low-cost exploration. Each of these visions has timelines, budgets, prototypes, and test missions scheduled for the next 5 years. The space race is no longer theoretical, it is operational. This is why missions today feel so different from those of the past. When Apollo astronauts walked on the moon, there was no plan to stay, no plan to build, no plan to extract resources. It was a geopolitical demonstration. Today's missions are the opposite. They are reconnaissance probes, mineral surveys, ice mapping, landing tests, precision navigation rehearsals. They are the opening moves of a much larger strategy: colonization. Not in the sense of empire, but in the sense of permanence, creating a human presence that does not depend on Earth for every breath, every drop of water, every watt of power. To understand why this decade is so critical, imagine two timelines. In one timeline, the United States lands astronauts on the South Pole by 2026 or 2027. Surface missions begin assembling infrastructure. Commercial partners begin deploying cargo landers. Power systems are installed. Lunar ice is harvested. By 2030, an American-led coalition has a functioning outpost with regular resupply missions and robotic operations digging into the regolith. In the second timeline, China lands its next wave of Chang'e missions throughout the late 2020s. They successfully demonstrate in situ resource utilization. They deploy large solar arrays and a compact nuclear reactor. They build landing pads, roads, and regolith-based structures. By 2030, a fully robotic, self-sustaining Chinese lunar base exists at the South Pole, ready to receive taikonauts for long-term stays. Whichever timeline reaches maturity, first will dominate not just the moon, but the entire architecture of deep space. The moon is the gateway, it is the fuel station, it is the metal refinery, it is the launch platform. Whoever controls the gateway controls the expansion. The public sees launches and landings. They see spectacular photographs and triumphant announcements, but the real decisions, the ones that shape the future, are happening in boardrooms, in laboratories, in quiet negotiations between nations. They revolve around contracts for mining rights, orbital space lanes, communication frequencies, nuclear reactor designs, and robotic labor systems. The people alive today are witnessing the birth of an interplanetary economy, even though most don't realize it. This is the secret space race no one is talking about, because unlike the Cold War, this one isn't being broadcast. It's being quietly engineered. But signs of it are everywhere. Look at the explosion of launch companies. Look at the sudden urgency around lunar landing programs. Look at the new military doctrines describing cislunar space as a strategic theater. Look at the technology investments, reusable rockets, methane engines, autonomous rovers, orbital fuel depots, high-efficiency solar arrays, compact fission reactors, lunar GPS networks. When so many technologies converge, it's not a coincidence, it's preparation. The deeper question is why humanity is doing this now. Why not wait 50 years? Why not focus on Earth? The answer is both simple and profound: opportunity. For the first time in history, the technological barrier is low enough that building a lunar base is feasible. The cost curve of spaceflight has dropped by orders of magnitude. Reusable rockets have changed the math, robotics have changed the timeline, nuclear power has changed the range, artificial intelligence has changed the workload. What was impossible in 1970 is difficult today, but will be routine in 2030. The nations and corporations that recognize this window are racing to take advantage before it closes. And it will close. Because once lunar bases exist, once mining begins, once a space economy forms, it will be incredibly hard to challenge whoever got there first. Imagine trying to compete with a country that has unlimited fuel in orbit while you have to ship every drop from Earth. Imagine trying to build a base next to someone who already has roads, power plants, water storage, and industrial facilities. Imagine trying to negotiate resource rights after they've already been claimed. The deadline is not arbitrary. It is structural. It is built into the physics of logistics and the economics of space. But this race is not just about nations. It's about ideas. The idea that humanity belongs only on Earth, or the idea that we are meant to expand. The idea that space is a shared commons, or the idea that space will be divided like land and oceans. The idea that cooperation is possible, or the idea that competition is inevitable. For the first time, these ideas are being tested not in theory, but in metal and fuel and regolith. We may soon live in a world where children grow up knowing that humans live on more than one world, where the moon has towns or research stations, where satellites act as ferry points between Earth and lunar orbit, where robotic factories build solar panels on the surface, where spaceflight becomes as normal as air travel. This is not fantasy. It is the direction we are heading unless humanity chooses to stop. When the year 2030 arrives, the world will look up at the moon differently, not as a distant object, but as territory, claimed, developed, inhabited. Some will be inspired, some will be horrified, some will feel hope, some will feel fear, but everyone will feel something. Because for the first time in history, the moon will not be empty. And what happens next, whether humanity becomes a spacefaring civilization or fractures into competing space powers, will depend on the choices being made right now. The engineers designing mining robots, the scientists mapping lunar ice, the administrators funding or canceling missions, the companies launching rockets, the nations signing agreements. The deadlines are real, the race is underway, and the finish line is closer than anyone realizes. 2025 begins the build-up. 2027 begins the landings. 2030 begins the permanence. By the time the decade ends, the future will be decided. This is the secret space race. This is why the world is changing, and this is why 2030 is the deadline.